It's week 14, and the NFL had 6 byes. So the week that determines who gets into the playoffs, the last few spots, maybe some leagues, the playoffs have already started. It's, well, challenging, but that's why we're here. Chris Allen joining me, Sigmund Bloom, on behalf of footballguys.com to answer your questions. And Chris, there's going to be some names that we're not used to getting in start-sit questions today. It's that kind of week. It is that kind of week. Let's jump in. And again, you guys are the best jumping in. You guys and gals are the best getting us all these questions. If it's on your mind in the morning, to join us and to give us great material for the show. Michael Trainer, first one in at 7:05 a.m. Central, Eastern. I don't remember. Good morning. Could you suggest 3 of these 4? T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, and Garrett Wilson. Who sits?
See, out of that group, I mean, you could make the case for potentially Garrett Wilson sitting out of that group. I mean, that'd probably be the hardest one to make the case for, to be quite honest, because I mean, T is the hardest for me. I mean, you guys see the hat, you guys know who I support. But actually, he didn't miss, but was limited throughout the week with an ankle injury, if I'm remembering correctly. But we just know that the Bengals rely on both him and Jamar Chase, for their offensive production. Chris Godwin, seeing the target share that he has over the past few weeks, in Tom Brady's offense. I know against San Francisco, it's going to be a tough out. But we know at least the shorter ADOT, or just the slot targets, are going to be the valuable ones there. And Christian Kirk, with Tennessee missing so many defensive starters this week, we can see him having a good out. So, gosh, I mean, I guess in this particular case, T would probably be the one that I would probably sit.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's where I'm at.
I think it's T, just because he now granted, I say this, Chris, and down the stretch last year, Higgins had some 11 for 179 and 2 touchdowns or something, and then Chase followed up the next week. So, I mean, based on last year and how this offense peaked as we got further into the season and how they were posting week winning totals, I don't want to say T. Higgins doesn't have the ceiling, and he doesn't say PPR, but Chris Godwin, especially in PPR, if it's a half PPR or a non-PPR, I might be inclined to say Chris Godwin is the guy to sit here because his cheap PPR points don't pile up as much. Christian Kirk just has too high of a ceiling. Tennessee's got a funnel defense to the pass. Garrett Wilson is one of those guys that he continues to produce. So Buffalo's weather, and real quick, Buffalo, East Rutherford weather, any reason for it to alter any of your decisions today?
Not as of right now. I was looking at it earlier in the week. It looked like there was going to be some rain, snowish type stuff going on this morning, but not enough to really shake me off of any of the normal plays for today.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson's just too hot to put on your bench right now. So I think it comes down to Higgins and Godwin, and I think in a PPR I'm putting in Godwin, and a half PPR in a non-PPR I'm putting in Higgins because he's got a better chance of touchdowns. But tough decisions, although if you're still caring about your team and you're alive in week 14, then you're probably pretty good at this. Citron Physics, Debo or TJ Hawkinson in a wide receiver tight end PPR slot?
I want Debo this week.
Yeah.
I think he's the one. It could be because couldn't you just see with Brock Purdy now starting for the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan just you know what? Let's just simplify things. That guy out there, the one that can turn a 5-yard slant into a 60-yard touchdown, find that guy and just continue to throw the ball to him. Not to take any away from Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, but it's just with the way that Debo has been able to take over games in the past, the target share that he has earned in years past as well, I think that he could be the one to really take over this game.
Yeah, he could get some extra touches as a runner, especially with Tampa Bay's run defense. You want to stretch them out horizontally. That's Debo's music also. And like you said, with Brock Purdy, just distribute the ball, man. And it's not the fantasy playoffs yet. And of course, I'm going to go psychological narrative on the couch. But I always use the what can you live with test at this point in the season. Yeah. I can live with losing because I played Debo Samuel. I'm not sure I can live with losing because I sat Debo Samuel.
Especially for TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah. And look, Detroit, Minnesota. And I will say this. Detroit, Minnesota, absolutely, I would say it's the favorite to be the highest scoring of the game. game
I
of the
agree.
day. So there's a multiplier effect there where if you're looking for anybody from this game, a DJ Chark, even a Jamal Williams type, an Adam Thielen, and a TJ Hawkinson, their ceilings are higher than a typical week. On the flip side of that, though, Detroit's defense is way improved from 4 or 5 weeks ago. They're really coming together. And even though Minnesota beat the Jets last week, they didn't have an offensive display. I mean, they were able to be highly efficient, and their defense did the bend but don't break thing. But their defense is hemorrhaging yards and points right now. Okay, Citron Physics also wants to know Kyler tomorrow night against New England or Geno today against Carolina.
I like Geno, to be quite honest. I do think that Kyler will be just fine against the Patriots defense. I mean, we've seen rushing quarterbacks ball out against them, whether it was Justin Fields. I mean, so the potential is there for Kyler to put on another highlight reel worthy performance. But without Kenneth Walker, like in the line, I'm sure we'll have Travis Homer, like Tony Jones questions at some point throughout the show. But couldn't you just see Pete Carroll just like unleash Geno and just kind of let them do the thing that they've been doing so well throughout the entirety of the season, which is passing? I'm sure they'll continue to have a relatively balanced offense, but if there were ever a time for Pete Carroll and the Seahawks to lean on their passer that has been performing at the very least a top 10 rate so far this season, this would be the case, and let Geno do his thing.
Yeah, let's file this one, Chris, under good problems to have.
For sure.
Good. There's a lot of people like I would be happy with either of those guys over what I have. I would just give the slight edge to Kyler because of that theoretical 35-40 point upside. Because as you said, Patriots defense struggles with mobile quarterbacks, but Geno's safer. And when you got Geno in, well, you're getting DK and Tyler Lockett in your lineup. And like Chris said, you need to look at Seattle as a pass-heavy offense today against Carolina because of the state of their backfield. Rob Monticelli. Good morning. Ceiling. And he says he needs ceiling. I like that when we get these specifications. At tight end, David Njoku. And it looks like Amari Cooper's going to play. Remember, he had that injury on Thursday, didn't practice on Friday. When that happens, I always think players are on the doubtful side of questionable. But it sounds like he's going to play, at least based on the Adam Schefter report this morning. David Njoku, Evan Ingram in that game at Tennessee. Again, Jacksonville, another offense that should pass a lot today. On the other side of that matchup, Chigoziem Okonkwo. So who do we want at tight end out of those three when we need ceiling?
If we're looking for ceiling, I think Njoku is the one with the large ceiling. I like the fact that, at least for Njoku's situation, having Amari still on the field, despite the fact that he is dealing with that hip injury, I mean, it gives Cincinnati another target to at least be aware of, like once they're on the field. We'll see how much Amari is capable of doing. So I do like the guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones. I like for today. And then, of course, David Njoku as well. But then on the other side, I mean, Elijah Moore, Sherfield, Dortch, Parker. Looking at that other portion, I don't know. I mean, Sherfield is fine. I like Sherfield coming into this, but now with Jalen Waddle back, I'm assuming Tyreek Hill is going to play as well. I don't see an issue, or I don't see a reason for us to be looking his way. Talk me out of Devontae Parker, because I think I'm being stubborn at this point with Devontae Parker, especially with Jacoby Myers expected to be out.
Right. I'm not going to talk. That was the name that kind of lit up for me too. And on the tight end question, if we're looking for ceiling, Njoku's the one that has like a 9 for 100 and a touchdown kind of ceiling. Ingram and Okonkwo just don't have that. Now, if this was a question without that, well, let me put it this way: if someone says, "I really want to start Okonkwo over David Njoku," am I crazy? I get that. That's such a common form of question. I like that. The questions kind of coalesce into different forms. And one of them is, I'm thinking of doing this thing that I know the rankings are going to say don't do. Am I crazy? Which I like, because another way I often put it, Chris, is I won't talk you out of it.
Right.
As opposed, or I'll say, I lean this way, but trust your gut, just to let you know that I'm not trying. I'm 51-49 on this question. And if someone said, I really want to play Okonkwo over Njoku, am I crazy? No, you're not crazy, because in addition to the Bengals pass offense peaking, their pass defense is peaking. Deshaun Watson not peaking, and it could just be a miserable day for the Browns offense in general, whereas Okonkwo is going to be in a bigger role. And with Traylon Burks out, would it be surprising if he put up 5 for 100 and a touchdown? No, it would not be surprising.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say that the only other uh, a pass catching option like on that team in order to create some of the explosive plays that we've seen downfield has been Okonkwo. Like
Yeah.
it's him and surprisingly enough, Austin Hooper that
Yeah.
are tied for the lead in terms of explosive passing plays, like for the Titans. So no, I think Okonkwo could do it.
And it's offensive manufacturer. Now let's step through these wide receiver options. And this is a great point where, again, the confluence of 6 teams on bye, the NFL regular season getting extended another week recently. So now we have week 14 as a week that has playoff implications, or even is the playoffs, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
something you'll go back to in your league constitution this offseason if that's what happened. 6 teams on bye. So you are having to find these kinds of players to get you through. And my favorite kind of fantasy football win is whenever you pick the right one. It's that last guy. It's just like when you watch one of the most underrated things about championship level sports, Chris, is it often hinges on a player that the team's never intended for it to hinge on, right? The
Yes.
last pinch hitter off the bench in the 7th game of the World Series, the 7th offensive lineman who has to come in because 2 offensive linemen got hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how this kind of question is for fantasy football. So Elijah Moore, just his role isn't big enough. Trent Sherfield's interesting because Jalen Waddle's banged up. I would
Mm-hmm.
not be surprised. I'm not saying bench Jalen Waddle, folks, but I would not be surprised if Trent Sherfield plays a larger role again. Greg Dortch is interesting. Rondale Moore's not going to play, and we know when Moore hasn't been in there, Dortch is the safe play. Okay, I think Dortch is the most likely to not crap out and leave you with like a 2-point week. Okay,
Yeah.
but Devontae Parker is really interesting here because when Byron Murphy is out, Arizona's pass defense struggles. And Jacoby Myers has been that guy, whether it's Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones, that they can rely on. So we saw, I think it was the Baltimore game earlier this year, right? Didn't Parker go off for something like 150 yards in that
That
one with
sounds
Mac
right.
Jones at quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
So when Mac Jones goes downfield, he and Parker actually have a pretty good connection.
Mm-hmm.
And like we talked about, I don't think New England's going to be able to contain Kyler Murray. I think Damian Harris is also likely to be out. The running game hasn't been great. I think this is another team that's probably going to skew more pass than run. And that's a reason to like Parker. So no, I'm not going to talk you out of that at all. Unite Santini, Hollywood Brown or DJ Moore. Are we ready to trust Sam Darnold enough to play DJ Moore over Hollywood Brown in a 0.5 PPR?
No, I
No,
don't think
no.
I can. I don't think I can. I was like, I'm trying to think myself.
You
Like,
built some suspense there.
I'm trying to like talk myself into why I would like land on there. I can't get there. It's just
No.
I mean, there's definitely a possibility given the way that Seattle's defense has played over the past couple of weeks. They're looking more like the Seattle defense that we saw in the earlier parts of the season, that we saw in that middle lull where they started to seem like they were getting things together. But with the target share, with playing against Kyler, who we know is going to be able to move the offense, the chances for the Cardinals to move into scoring position are much, much higher than what we could expect for the Panthers.
Yeah. I mean, for Hollywood Brown, what's going to be interesting about this one, Chris, is a healthy Hollywood Brown and a healthy DeAndre Hopkins. How does that shake out in this offense? Again, with Greg Dortch saying I can do some damage out of the slot too. Andrew Goodman, I'm glad we got a Tyler Huntley question in. Tyler Huntley is going to a player I think a lot of people are debating this morning. Tyler Huntley or Mike White?
Ooh, I think I'm going to stay with Tyler Huntley. I think it's more for the rushing upside than anything else, because we've seen even just like last week against like the Vikings defense, like Mike White, while I would take away the second interception. The first interception he threw, like that's more on him than anything else. But the second interception, I'm not going to really like put on him. But either way, we did see them be able to put together like string together a number of productive drives, at least be relatively efficient outside of the turnovers and whatnot. But still, I mean, going up against Buffalo's defense, I can't expect similar output at this point. So the chances of him, again, if we're looking for teams that are going to be able to move the ball into their opposing team's scoring position, like to get into their red zone, it's just looking at the way things are setting up right now. I just can't see it for Mike White. Versus with Huntley, the rushing floor should at least be able to save him should any turnovers happen at this point.
Yeah, I'm not bullish on Huntley today. Okay. He did play against the Steelers in week 18 last year. The Ravens had to win to keep the Steelers from going to the playoffs. They did not. It was a 16-13 overtime game. I would expect a similar score today. Huntley had about 140 passing yards and 2 interceptions, but he also ran for 70 yards. With Mike White, like you said, there's a lower floor there, and there's a ceiling. Look, if you're saying, I don't know, I'm feeling Mike White. And they did settle for 5 field goals last week. If Braxton Berrios catches that ball, he's a hero and has a great fantasy week. but it was the Vikings defense. Think about that when you're debating whether to put your Lions in, and in ideal indoor conditions. So I'm going with Tyler Huntley here. Huntley said he had the flu last week too. He said he was
Oh,
playing
that's right. Yeah, it could
through the
only
flu.
get what they tried to give him a hot dog at halftime.
Yeah,
If
he
I
could take a
remember
bite of
reading
the hot dog.
Yeah.
Mark Sanchez says, "I'll take that hot dog."
Yeah.
Munsey Muns. Half PPR. Juju Smith-Schuster. Been a while since he's come through for us. Gabe Davis. Been a while since he's come through for us. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Well, if you get punt returns, he came through for us last week.
I'll lean DPJ in this one. Like we were just talking about that a second ago. Whereas if this had been Amari Cooper's out, and then now the passing game options now like fall down to him and Joku, if you want to toss in like Kareem Hunt or whatever. But now with Amari Cooper there, I mean, having a solid like wide receiver one like alongside of him in order to take some defensive attention away, we could see like Donovan Peoples-Jones like get mixed in, and even standing on his own, we've seen him pop up for 6, 7, 8 target games like for the last like 6 weeks or so. So no, I do like Donovan Peoples-Jones and what we can at least see being a competitive matchup with the Bengals.
Yeah, I think so. I just think with Juju, again, I kind of hinted at what my answer was going to be. I mean, at least Peoples-Jones is making things happen in the game. Juju and Gabe Davis, not as much. Ooh, good one. Here you go. You said we were going to get questions about him. Full PPR, shake and bake 145. Travis Homer or James Cook?
Oh man, now James Cook. I think I'm going to go James Cook like in this one. I think that's an easier sell for me to against Travis Homer, just given the game environment. I think Josh Allen's now popping up. Like if we're talking about like DFS circles, Josh Allen is popping up as a strong play for the main slate today. But then also if we're looking at the team total, like overall, Bills do have the edge there too. And given the way that Josh Allen's been playing over the past few weeks, elbow thing, not a doctor or anything like that, but something's up. I mean, in the idea that now we're seeing James Cook in his target utilization starting to climb up. We saw him actually take over in terms of the running back touches last week as well. So I think everything is kind of pushing his way. Like full PPR definitely helps, but if we're already seeing him start to take over some of the rushing as well, like over Devin Singletary, I think James Cook is a stronger bet than Travis Homer.
Yeah, James Cook gives me serious FOMO this week. Because you saw it trending towards him last week. I think he had, Devin Singletary got the touchdown last week, but Cook was still like a 15, 16 point play, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, I think it's important to watch these trends. It's in the Bills' interest to have a balanced offense. It's in the Bills' interest to have a balanced offense for a lot of reasons. But this week, the other thing is the Jets have some big brutes up front that can handle sacking Josh Allen and would love to,
Oh, yeah.
Handing the ball off. And the Jets, I think if you want to pick your poison, you want to face the Jets run defense. You want to test the Jets run defense. And I think that James Cook can do that. Now, these teams have been fickle about their backfields, so we could see them go back to James Cook only getting 4 or 5 touches, but I'll take my chances. Travis Homer is a safe play in so much that I think we can pencil him in. That call up of they called up a running back. My brain's
Godwin Igwebuike.
Yeah, Igwebuike. He was a special teamer for the Lions, got a few touches for them. Them calling up a running back is giving you this signal that they don't think that Walker and Dallas are going to play. And I think that they trust Homer more than Tony Jones. Homer just wasn't active last week. Homer got in practices this week and is active. He probably can do more damage in the passing game. It wouldn't shock me if Homer is the better play. Okay. But Cook has more momentum here. And Carolina's defense is actually underrated. So Iamine's Cat, what's up, man? Start one in case of Barkley needed. Let me stop there. Take the needle off the record. If somebody, what's your general feeling about Barkley today? Even someone saying, well, Barkley, we're going to hear in an hour. All signs are that he's going to be active. But, yeah, I'm not feeling it. I'm thinking about, like, I'd play James Cook over him, for instance. I think I actually have Cook ahead of him in my rankings. Are we to the point where I'd play like Dante Foreman and Travis Homer and that?
See,
where are you at on Barkley just in a vacuum?
That's where I'm at as well. If I had even, let's say, an RB2-ish type option, I'd give it a long look before
Raheem Mostert.
Get that. That's where I'm at. I think that's about the cutoff, like right there for me, where it's if I know I can get let's say 10-ish touches in, let's say at the very least a neutral, not bad, but not great. So let's say a neutral game environment, I would give it a long look. Because let's say even if he plays,
Yeah.
what's the chances that he's going to aggravate said injury and then we're just not going to see him? Or even once they get to the point where the Eagles have just absolutely matched them for a 3-score lead, how much more are we going to see? Now, I know they didn't call up anybody from the practice squad. It's just him and Matt Breida today, if I'm remembering correctly.
Gary Brightwell, too.
Gary Brightwell, yeah.
Gary Brightwell actually looked pretty good a couple weeks ago, but anyway.
Yeah, but it's just, I mean, so it's that 3-man group, and that's fine. But if it gets to the point where either he aggravates something like mid-game, they fall out of contention within the contest, what's the point of them continuing to throw Barkley out there? That's kind of like the 2 points that just keep circling my mind, of the fact that if I could find another option on my squad, I would go that way.
Yeah, but I think Ian's cat has it right when he says, in case of Barkley if needed. And so I wouldn't start any of these options over Barkley, but it's good to plan. This is exactly where you need to be, folks, is knowing if we hear he's inactive, or if they say, well, in warm-ups his neck stiffened up again, so they're not sure what his role is going to be. Pay close attention. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Damian Pierce, Zonovan Knight.
I don't mind Zonovan Knight out of that group.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
our knight in shining armor. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And with the not just the rushing, I mean, efficient like on his touches, but also like the pass catching option as well. I mean, I know that Carter is going to like at least take over. So him, Ty Johnson also should be involved like in the passing game too. So it's just, while there might be other receiving options like for Mike White, I do think that having at least having Knight in there is probably their best bet, like against Buffalo. So I like Knight there.
Yeah, they want to have a balanced offense. They want this to be a close to the vest back and forth game, like the first game, which they won 20-17. And pay attention, right? Coaches will tell us things without just being explicit. But when whoever it was, the beat writer asked, what about Zonovan Knight now that Michael Carter's back? And he said he's not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
There's a little intelligence in there for you. I wouldn't be surprised if Knight gets another 15, 18 touches in this one. Yeah, right. Let's see. I like this. I just want to address this because I love the subterfuge and the gamesmanship. Ben W. Has anyone else put all your players on the bench until right before kickoff so your opponent doesn't know who you're playing? I love it.
I love that.
I think that's great. Of course, because I'm neurotic, Chris, I'm like, I would forget to put someone in, and the games would kick off, and I would mess it up somehow.
That would happen to. I would do that. That definitely sounds like something.
Wait a second. Why is Austin Eckler on my bench?
Yeah, like why am I not getting the updates on my phone telling me that this player has scored? Like, what's going on?
Right. Yeah. All right. JB's grandma is always awesome in the chat room. I love our chat room. Gabe Davis. Now, we'd already said, I'm kind of lukewarm on Gabe Davis. Mike Williams is going to be back today. What does that make us feel about Josh Palmer? Enough to play Gabe Davis over him?
Yes, I think that's where I'm leaning. In my mind, having Mike Williams back allows, it's more of a tactical value than being a fantasy value. Now, of course, Mike Williams, like with his like contested catch ability, downfield threat, yada yada yada, I do think that he will at least unlock the intermediate portions of the field where we've seen the passing game kind of struggle like over the past few weeks. If you're constantly relying on, DeAndre Carter and like a couple other folks like in there in order to constantly like keep drives going, then yeah, there might be an issue. And if they have a guy that's more of a downfield threat in order to open up those areas of the field, there's a chance that Joshua Palmer could be the guy to help with that. Because Keenan Allen, I don't know what's up with him. I don't want to say it's the age cliff, but at the very least, he's probably playing hurt, like at this point, because we've seen the yards of separation just not be there as we have for Keenan in the past. So I do think that Palmer should be able to take over some of the more the intermediate like slot reps, be efficient with those reps. And so I do like Josh Palmer for tonight.
Yeah, I'm going Palmer over Davis. Here's how I see this playing out. Now, who knows? Your mileage may vary, and who knows what the actual results will be. But I think you put it really well, Chris, when you said Mike Williams' return is more about tactical value than value that shows up on the fantasy stat sheet. Because number one, Chargers offensive line not exactly giving Justin Herbert time to throw downfield. Number two, Xavier Howard. So it sure makes sense to me if I'm Josh Boyer to say, let's do it. Xavier Howard is going to make sure put the cap on Mike Williams, and I think that means Palmer, Everett, Allen. Allen was looking better last week, but it was we'll see. But I mean, it's funny with 6 teams on bye. I don't think anyone's going to ask us should I play Keenan Allen just because. But yeah, I think it's and it's, with Davis, it's just cold and like not necessarily cold with the weather, but Davis is cold for fantasy. And like Chris was alluding to, Josh Allen's elbow might not be exactly right now. So I'm going Josh Palmer there. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Palmer has another really good game, and it should be a high-scoring game. It should be a game where the Chargers have to pass. Josie Marchant, quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, Daniel Jones, or Mike White?
Ryan Tannehill, Daniel Jones, or Mike White. Can I talk you into Daniel Jones? I think Mike.
That's the boom bust play. That's the ceiling play. That's your ceiling play.
Mike White's the safer play.
Right.
In my mind, Mike White is the safer play. I mean, we're already talking about the fact that we're interested in Garrett Wilson for today. We're interested in Bam Knight for today. Shoot, there are probably folks with some tight end conundrums that will probably want to start like Tyler Conklin or something like that. So if we like all of those pass catching options, then the value all has to intersect at Mike White. I think Daniel Jones is probably he's the boom bust play for sure.
Yeah, it's. Would you be surprised, Chris, if I told you these are my 16th, 17th, and 18th ranked quarterbacks this week? No, and again, they're that close. Okay, so if you have a lean here, Josie, one of my favorite Steely Dan songs. They're all my favorite. Then go with that lean. Tannehill's facing these year defense, but doesn't have Burks. As if Barkley is out, will Jones be a better play? So Jones gives you the ceiling. Here's why. So I'll give you all a peek under the hood, right? I do my initial set of projections on Wednesday, and I just let them sit there. And on Thursday, I go back and I group everybody in tiers, and I make adjustments, and often putting it to the test of, am I really telling people to play this player over this player? And otherwise, just let it sit out there for a day. And when I looked at this tier of quarterbacks this week, Chris, I thought, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley is not either going to play or he's probably not going to be that effective. Remember what happened to Ryan Tannehill against the Eagles? They shut down the offense by halftime. Now the Giants, it's a divisional game. The Commanders beat the Eagles pretty soundly a few weeks ago, and the Giants just play, so divisional game skews stuff. But for Daniel Jones, when I zeroed in on what do I really think is going to happen today, it feels like one of those mama said there'd be days like this kind of days for him. Now he'll keep fighting. He'll keep swinging. Mike White, like we've talked about, they'll probably be conservative here. Your best hope for Mike White actually is if Josh Allen just goes crazy and Mike White has to throw more. I don't know if that's going to happen. I actually have Tannehill first, and here's why. I do think that Jacksonville's going to sell out to stop Derrick Henry. And Tannehill's been coming alive a little more as a runner. Tannehill has been doing a little bit more as a passer. He's had some good days as a passer. And I remember that not that long ago, we thought of Tannehill as a quarterback one. Now, he had A.J. Brown then, but and Corey Davis. But my point is, there's more there because, look, if they can win comfortably, if Jacksonville rolls over in this game, then you'll wish you hadn't played Ryan Tannehill. But really, the answer is trust your gut. If you're caring about fantasy football in Week 14, you have this choice. But I will say this, like you laid out well, Chris. If you need 30 points out of your quarterback, then it's Daniel Jones. Or if you feel like you're an underdog and you need to maximize your ceiling, then it's Daniel Jones and hope for the best. All right. Another data point for Travis Homer. Travis Homer or Rashad White. Looks like Leonard Fournette's going to play.
Still, even with Leonard Fournette in the lineup, I lean towards White. The zone coverage that San Francisco typically employs has been better for Rashad White. That was some data that was pulled, I think, by Dwayne McFarland, like for Fantasy Life. So showing him like having a higher target utilization in that type of defensive coverage. And also after him scoring the game-winning touchdown, like on that drive. I mean, there has to be like some more work like coming. That's more on the narrative side of things. But so far, I mean, Rashad White has at least been able to match or at least line up with Leonard Fournette in terms of the rushing metrics. Now we've seen the pass catching stuff come in as well. In full point PPR, I think White's the slightly better option.
Yeah, White's safe here, and Leonard Fournette could aggravate his injury, or White could just be the hot hand. I wouldn't be shocked if Homer is the right answer in hindsight. There's just too much uncertainty about the size of his role, who else is going to play a role in the backfield, how big that role is going to be. So I think it is Rashad White. Will Gray, and I like I like the little humble brag that Will tacks on after this. The question is Jamal Williams, Rashad White, or James Cook, and you sit one, and he says he's on bye, but he's going for total points because there's a prize for total points. So
Gotcha.
a little less
Okay.
pressure on us, Chris. He's just going for total points. He's on bye. He's already in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Who sits out of Jamal Williams, Rashad White, and James Cook?
Out of that group, I mean, assuming, and if we're going, let's just split the baby and say that it's half point PPR.
Right.
And all right. Well, I think out of that group, I think I'd probably sit Rashad White.
Yeah, I
out
think
of
so.
there.
I
think that's the easiest one. Jamal Williams, I want a piece of the Detroit Minnesota game if I can get one. And even with DeAndre Swift getting a bit more work last week, we know once they get into the 5-yard line, even though Swift got more touches actually once they got within the 10-yard line for the first time all season, Williams is at least a decent bet for a touchdown or two. James Cook, we already talked about him. But I think the Rashad White thing with the way with Tampa's team total, what is it, 18? 19 points.
Right. San Francisco. San Francisco's defense surging again.
D'Amico, I mean, just give him a head coaching job as soon as possible.
Back to the Texans, maybe.
Maybe. But yeah, I think he probably has like the most uncertainty just given his team's environment. Nothing against him, it's just his team's environment.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a floor week for the Bucs offense for sure. And like you said, you mentioned, there's a burnt bridges apparently between D'Amico Ryans and the Texans. So shame on me for even. I'm sorry, D'Amico. I think that James Cook's in slam dunk, and like you said, in a PPR, it's a little easier to make a case for Rashad White over Jamal Williams. But it would not be shocking to see Jamal Williams get 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game. Remember this, and I don't know that we've taken a moment to appreciate this, Chris. The Lions offense is like the Brady, Welker, Moss offense. There's no lead that they just say, we're going to let up, right? You don't see them when they get up 2 touchdowns say, well, we're going to just go into conservative mode. They keep going. I mean, how many big point totals have they put up this year already? Oh, yeah. So that's another and it's a divisional opponent. And remember, here's what I'm here for, Chris. The Lions win out and go to the playoffs. I want it to happen.
I would love that.
They play this week Minnesota. Next week they play the Jets. And the last 3 games I think are like Green Bay and Chicago and Carolina or something like that. So it can happen. I want it to happen.
Restore the roar, baby. Restore the roar.
Yeah. I'm all for that. James McCullough. We haven't got a Travis Etienne question yet. Standard Etienne, Jeff Wilson, Adam Thielen, or Chris Godwin?
Godwin, I think, is probably the better option, but I don't mind. I would probably have Etienne like right behind that. I know Jeff Wilson starting to cede some ground to Raheem Mostert last week. Like the game environment for Miami as a whole, but just given the uncertainty in his workload, I think I'd probably like list those and go Godwin, Etienne, probably Thielen, and then Jeff Wilson. I think that's probably how I'd have them ordered.
Yeah. Jeff Wilson is a true what the heck flex because it wouldn't be surprising. Wouldn't be surprising for Raheem Mostert got hurt at some point in the game. It wouldn't be surprising if Miami can get up in this game. That it's Wilson in the second half. It does come down to Etienne or Godwin. I think standard takes a little the oomph out of Godwin, but he's a safer play. I would probably go Etienne. You know why? And this is more on the couch kind of stuff. Is when I think about telling James here to bench Etienne, then I think, oh, let's go to the game break. Travis Etienne got free for a 75-yard touchdown. Because I think with the Tennessee run defense, it's a really good run defense, but it's Travis Etienne.
It's a hurt run defense too.
It is. And they have a lot of key injuries up front. And the challenge here is, remember all the billing, Travis Etienne's going to play a big part in the passing game. He's going to where has that been? I mean, Travis Etienne's been a massive hit for fantasy. If he's going to be a hit today, it's going to be because they have a game plan that includes him a lot as a receiver. And Derryberry, I think this one's pretty simple in a half PPR. Etienne, Cook, or Jamal Williams. I mean, so it's really Etienne or Jamal Williams in a half PPR.
I think for that, I'd put Etienne on that one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and you're right. I think he has been, while not like a complete, like he's not like getting DeAndre Swift type targets where we've seen Swift go out on like these wheel routes and all that. They've been more like shorter, like dump offs or something like that for Etienne. But he's been picking them up at like a 2-3 target per game clip so far over the last like 5-6 weeks or so. So I do think, at least from that standpoint, that Etienne is probably the better option there.
Yeah, I hate it because I get so excited. I'm excitable. I hate it, but generally, the folks who fade the more involvement in the passing game for a running back in the offseason talk. They end up being right. I mean, Barkley was another one we thought, but he was going to be a big part of the passing game. So, yeah, I think I'm going ETN over Jamal Williams here. I wouldn't be surprised if Williams is a better play. ETN could easily just amass 50, 60 total yards and get a couple of catches where Williams could have 2 or 3 touchdowns. But alternatively, depending on how the Lions score, Williams could also have that 11 for 40 kind of game, and he doesn't have that breakaway ability in the passing game punch that ETN. Plus, ETN will get, if Jacksonville can get in the red zone, ETN will be in there. All right. Dave Malone, desperation play time. Kareem Hunt or Jerick McKinnon?
McKinnon. I like McKinnon for today. And if we're trying to think about how, again, this is more narrative-y, but if we're trying to think about how could Kansas City actually, let's say, go away from the strength of the Broncos defense. I mean, the strength has particularly been their perimeter coverage and the guys up front. I just can't see. Pacheco has been fine. Angry runner. I mean, violent runner, like so far, like throughout this season. But I could see McKinnon like popping up for at least a solid game, at least with his usage in the passing game, and also red zone touches as well. I mean, we watched it last week, him getting a couple of targets and actually a couple of touches like inside the 10, inside the 20. And if that keeps up, I mean, McKinnon for me is probably the better option versus Kareem Hunt. We don't know what his workload is going to be on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any momentum. The Browns offense doesn't have any momentum. So I think it's McKinnon who scored last week. All right, Philip Heath. He puts the question in this term: who's going to score a touchdown first, James Cook or Jeff Wilson?
James Cook.
Mm-hmm. I mean, now what's funny is in my projections, I have Cook and Wilson as both with a 50-50 shot to score a touchdown. But Cook's, I think, more explosive, and he has more momentum coming into this one. I think that Miami has a better chance of scoring a rushing touchdown than Buffalo does, or a non-quarterback rushing touchdown. However, Raheem Mostert really complicates these things, and they've been using him at the goal line. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, Michael Gallup, or Jameson Williams?
Michael Gallup or Jameson Williams. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Yeah, for the same reasons that we talked about earlier. I think that's where I'm at.
With Michael Gallup, he needs to get the touchdown in the first half. Dallas playing Houston.
Yeah, exactly. Because afterwards, it's lights out. Like,
isn't it funny when we have that tension when we're projecting games, Chris? This game is so lopsided that it almost steers you away from the options because you wonder how much of the game are they actually going to be going for it.
People are wondering about CeeDee Lamb's outlook like for today because it's just after they wind up scoring a couple touchdowns and Micah Parsons baptizes Davis Mills a couple of times, and what are we going to expect out of the Cowboys offense?
I like that, baptizing them. Close your eyes. This will only hurt a little bit. Dave Malone asked about Julio Jones or Devontae Parker. I think we agree with Devontae Parker in that one. Yeah. All right. Trying to get at least to the questions. We'll spend a little more time because it is week 14. I want to at least get to all the questions for the people who got in here early. Biff, get your damn hands off her, Biff. One running back and one flex. ETN, Jeff Wilson, Isaiah Pacheco. We haven't got a Pacheco question yet. James Cook, George Pickens. I know one of the answers is going to be James Cook.
Yes. So one of the answers is going to be James Cook. And honestly, I would probably still throw in Travis Etienne on that as well. George Pickens is interesting, though. And I want to get your take. Knowing your team allegiances, I do think there's a chance that he has a good game today.
There's always a chance because he's George Pickens.
Right.
But you can pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Yeah, you can test the Baltimore secondary. Like, it's been more about like their front, like over the past couple of weeks. And I think there's a chance that if they let Kenny Pickett actually throw the ball downfield, which hasn't been the case over the past couple of weeks. I think that's been the problematic part. It's not for want, but I do think with their current shift in terms of them being more like, oh, let's just be a little bit more conservative. Let's get Deontay Johnson involved, Pat Freiermuth, blah, blah, blah. If they were to throw downfield, if they were to try and test like this, the perimeter coverage of Baltimore, Pickens could have a good day.
Yeah, he could. I would expect, and if Marcus Peters is on him, then there's always that one play that Marcus Peters, he's a boom bust kind of corner.
Oh, yeah, he's always hunting.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily. I'm not going to talk, and we agree that Cook's in. I would go with Pacheco over Etienne just to feel safer, but I think those are the two choices for that second spot. Well, and I'll just quickly touch on Pacheco. He's going to get his 15 to 20 carries. He's the first option if they call run at the goal line. So I like that. Denver can give Patrick Mahomes a little bit of trouble. Now, what's their defense like without Bradley Chubb? But we've seen in the game against the Rams that if Denver can open up a lead, and this is Denver's Super Bowl, by the way, which is kind of depressing.
Yeah.
But if they can open up a lead, then they're content to just lean on Pacheco and just nurse the lead. So I think there's a lot of ways for Pacheco to be okay. With ETN, you're just looking for that big play, but it wouldn't shock me if ETN comes through in the pass game or the running game. The thing really quickly on Pickens, because this might affect some other calls. So, like you said, you hit on the most important thing, I think, when you said, will they allow Kenny Pickett to throw downfield?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a running team now.
Right.
This is a team that wants to run the ball 35 times, and they're being successful doing that. And Tyler Huntley, I don't think, is going to do enough to get them out of that comfort zone. I think you're looking at a game where Kenny Pickett's throwing the ball like 20, 25 times. And Pat Fryermuth is probably the best play out of the three options, but this is not going to be a passing game that gives you a ceiling game because they have a recipe now, defense, running game, be safe with the football and try to eke out these wins. And, maybe Ravens go into a little bit of a tailspin here. All right. We're almost catching up to 9:00. And watching the World Cup at all, Chris?
I've caught tangentially caught games. I haven't been able to watch them during the game, but my office mate at work, she's been an avid watcher, and she's been keeping me up to date.
I got the fever in
drama.
1990. I mean, I would love to see Croatia has 4 million people. They're poised to go to the final game. Morocco, oh man, first African country to ever make it to the semifinals, which is awesome. And they play a true team game. All right, team game, team defense game. Biff is back. Pittsburgh or Tennessee defense?
Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I think that's the easier one. I mean, we going up against a backup quarterback, although stylistically like Lamar, so we do like his rushing floor for Tyler Huntley. I could still see him having some fits in the passing game, and we just saw him throw at least one interception last week. And what are the other weapons outside of Mark Andrews that we can rely on for this game? So it becomes difficult for me to expect much out of Tyler Huntley, at least out of this passing game, without at least a turnover or two in this game.
Yeah, this game's in Pittsburgh too. If there is a quarterback between Trevor Lawrence and Tyler Huntley who would implode today and have that turnover fest that you look for when you start a defense, I think that is Tyler Huntley. That's the Steelers. Of course, I'm a Steelers homer. Sprung. What's up, Sprung? This is a big one for winning into the FFPC main event 3-week sprint. Garrett Wilson or DK Metcalf?
DK Metcalf had what, foot injury or something along those lines?
He's going to play, but he's on the injury report.
Yeah, on the injury report. But I can't shy away from double-digit targets, or at least averaging close to 9-10 targets over the past few weeks. So I can't say no to one DK Metcalf in this matchup. So I think I lean that way.
And this is another way. It's kind of a similar test to the what can you live with test, but it's a little bit more focused. Do you want to trust Geno Smith or do you want to trust Mike White? Do you want to trust Geno Smith against Carolina or do you want to trust Mike White against Buffalo? Do you want to trust Geno Smith in Seattle, you don't trust Mike White in Buffalo? So, I think it's DK Metcalf. I wouldn't be surprised if Garrett Wilson ends up being the better call here, but I just feel better about that. Let's get a couple more in. It's week 14, and almost to the 9:00 questions. Here's another good desperation play question. Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Marvin Jones?
MVS for me. I think we've seen him at the very least. While MVS, we do think of MVS and Marvin Jones as being the same archetype of player, just the downfield threat. But we have seen MVS pop up for more intermediate and short routes or 6-7 target games in the past when they've had to lean on him. And while I'm not necessarily saying that's going to be the case for today, at least that's in his range of outcomes. I cannot expect that to be the case for Marvin Jones at any point in the season, especially at this point in his career.
Right. MVS can make your week on one play. Marvin Jones can't. Music Geek, we've talked about Kyler Murray. What about Kyler Murray or Jared Goff?
Ooh, already starting Amon-Ra. Oh, okay. Sun God. Let's go. So I'd still take Kyler Murray just for the ceiling. If you need a win to make the playoffs and you're looking for that ceiling play, Kyler Murray is always going to have that over Jared Goff. And we were talking earlier about the rushing rushing outages for some of the other rushing quarterbacks that have faced the Patriots, it just makes it easier for me to look at Kyler Murray and say that, yeah, if you want somebody to get you into the playoffs, it's going to be Kyler.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Jared Goff throws like 4 touchdowns today, but I also wouldn't be surprised if DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams combined for 4 rushing touchdowns today. Kyler's going to be involved, and well, James Conner does get some touchdowns. Look at that, my brain transposing that. Okay, half PPR, John Thompson, pick one: Garrett Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Dolphins running backs, or Isaiah Pacheco.
Probably Garrett Wilson. I think that's half point PPR. Yeah, I think it's probably Garrett Wilson. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Tyler Lockett, like
Right.
shortly after that. But just given the target share and just the fact that the Jets, I mean, this is a must-win like type spot for them. He's shown like the greatest rapport with Mike White so far. So yeah, I think it's Garrett Wilson. I mean, but close second is Lockett for me.
It's Wilson or Lockett. It's sort of similar to the Wilson and Metcalf question we just had. I
Yeah.
think Lockett's a little bit safer, but Wilson is the one who can give you the week winner. Lockett's on what, a 5 or 6 scoring touchdown streak? I'd probably go with Lockett. I wouldn't be surprised if Pacheco ends up being the right answer here too. Miami running backs.
True.
I mean, actually, Raheem Mostert might have the highest theoretical ceiling because it's the Chargers' run defense. So it's a good question.
Yeah.
I think you're zeroing on Wilson or Lockett. We haven't had Samaje Perine question yet, so let's get this as we go out the door here. Mixon. So Mixon's back, but Samaje Perine was the man while Mixon was out. I don't know if that's going to change how much Perine is used. Is it enough to put him in over Dante Foreman?
Oh, I would lean Foreman.
Yeah.
Over Perine. I mean, especially like in that specific situation, looking at going against Seattle's defense. We know what the fact that they've leaned on Foreman in the past. I mean, Hubbard has been waiting in the wings, and he's been at least a fine backup to Foreman. But just looking at the potential workload for Foreman compared to what we should expect for Perine, I'd probably lean Foreman in that case.
And maybe we see that it's a 50-50 workload split, although I think we had an item earlier this week that Mixon was going to go back to his starter role. But to give a more complete answer to the question of what kinds of running backs, directly below Samaje Perine in my rankings, Jeff Wilson, Devin Singletary, Travis Homer and Samaje Perine, very similar. Just above Perine, like I'm playing Zonovan Knight over him, playing Rachaad White over him, and one Dante Foreman. Anything you're struggling with, Chris? Anybody that's got you puzzled as you're setting your lineups to get into your playoffs?
I think the biggest one has been trying to set expectations for 2 receivers. So T, we talked about him earlier, and just setting expectations for this week since he had the injury earlier, and Jamar Chase on the upswing, but also Adam Thielen. I've got him on a couple of rosters, and like we were talking earlier, if you've got a piece of the Minnesota-Detroit game, you want to start them, like TJ Hockenson or whomever. But Thielen is the one that I'm having the biggest struggle with because he's not as involved in the red zone as we expected him to be this season, as he has been in seasons past. Catch rate has taken a step back as well. So even in a high scoring environment, I'm just wondering if he's the guy that I would really want to have versus, I don't know if there are too many other options in the same range that you'd want to start over him. But at the same time, it's just, is he somebody that you need to have in your roster today? And I'm not sure.
Hayden Hurst out for the Bengals. So maybe that might make all 3, of course Chase is in, but you might make Higgins and Boyd both good plays. Boyd would have had 5 for 85 and a touchdown last week if he hadn't dropped one that you or I could have caught. So I'm thinking about that. With Thielen, I just want to put this out there, okay? Before the Lions came together this year, they played the Vikings back in week 3, and the Vikings had to have a last drive. I think they had under a minute left, and Cousins threw 2 28-yard passes to KJ Osborne, and they won 28-24 on that drive. It was the last drive of the game. So the Lions played them straight up. And in that game, Justin Jefferson had 3 catches for 14 yards. Thielen had 6 for 61 and a touchdown in that game. So it's maybe too simple to say, well, they had a recipe to contain Jefferson. And Jeffrey Okuda's healthy, right?
Yeah.
So Thielen's interesting. And we had that question about Hawkinson earlier. I wouldn't go deep leagues. You have to be saying, can lightning strike twice with KJ Osborne? I would not be surprised. Remember, a few weeks back, the Lions played the Giants and just smothered them. just had,
Mhm.
I mean, and that game was in East Rutherford. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions really humble the Vikings in this game.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a great offensive game for anybody on the Vikings side. So we'll see. Every week we get together on Sunday. I don't know if we're going to get together on the Christmas Eve. We'll have to talk about that, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Is coming up here in 2 weeks. Everything's going to shift with Christmas on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's great, folks. And for those of you, again, I've commented on this a few times this week. I can remember at this time of year, we would be dealing with 25% of our normal audience. And I'm looking right now, we're almost at 300 people watching us right now.
Yeah.
And that's close to our typical level. And it's great. I love that y'all care about fantasy football, care about the community, care about being with all of us and spending time together. So it fills us back up. It gives me energy seeing all the questions when I come in, seeing the numbers rise as soon as we go live. Thanks, folks. Really, you're doing a great service for us. It is my brain wanted to make a portmanteau, a privilege, a pleasure, a privilege and a pleasure, a pleasure. It's a
Yes.
pleasure to serve everybody in our great community at Football Guys every week because you're so classy.